All right. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Haitian
Hey,
American Museum of Chicago's program tonight, our Artist Talk with SAMDI. And this program
hey,
is a
what's up?
part of HAMOC's 2022 initiative to diversify program offerings virtually and in person. My name is Carlos Bossard, and I'm the executive director of the museum. It is great to see you all. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. HAMOC's mission is to promote and preserve Haitian art, culture, history, and community in Chicago and beyond. Education is at the core of our mission, and we are glad to continue bringing insightful, meaningful, and impactful lectures and programs to the community. Before we begin, I would like to do a little bit of housekeeping and let you all know the format of tonight's event. First, this program is being recorded, and if you do not wish to be seen, feel free to turn off your video cameras now. Also, all of you are automatically put on mute as you enter the room. Please make sure to remain on mute throughout the program. And at the end of the program will be an opportunity to go from mute to unmute and speak with the artist directly. Auto-generated captioning has been turned on for accessibility. If you do need those notes, please make sure to reach out at the end. And then during our Q&A session at the end of the conversation, if you do have any questions, again, feel free to unmute yourself, or if you want, you can put those questions in the chat and I will go ahead and make sure to relay those to SAMDI. So it is my pleasure to introduce this evening our artist, SAMDI, who is here with us from Miami today. SAMDI is an
Hey,
interdisciplinary artist who is based in Miami, Florida, and is from Port-au-Prince, Haiti. He attended the New Film Academy in New York, where he studied digital film directing, as well as the Miami Ad School in Florida, where he studied graphic design and advertising. His work has also been exhibited internationally, including places like Los Angeles, Port-au-Prince, or Port of Spain, and Trinidad. A piece that we took from your website, SAMDI, something that really resonated with us, and just speaking about your work. So self-exploration and the understanding of the spirit as a human in this space are at the core of SAMDI's artistic practice. His work can reflect deep emotional trauma and at the same time express the beauty of love. So without further ado, I would like to introduce SAMDI. Thank you for being with us tonight.
hey, what's up, guys? Everybody can hear me? All right, cool. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. And this year again at the museum, we really are trying to bring in new artists to our space as we like to uplift Haitian voices, not just here in the Midwest in the US or Chicago, but throughout the world. And so you were on a lot of the lists that we were looking at when we were trying to find some new Haitian artists to bring to the museum.
That's good.
We've read plenty of articles about you. We've seen your Instagram, we've seen the work that you've been doing. And so I'm really excited to get to know you a little bit more, speak about your work, speak about your process, but then also, speak about those Haitian roots and what being Haitian means to you. So to kind of start off with tonight's conversation, SAMDI, if you could just speak about who you are, what's the art that you do, what's your passion, what stakes do you have in art, just to kind of get a view of your artistic practice.
Well, as you said, I study graphic design and advertising, and that was like for me when I was younger, maybe a escape from just being an artist. Because since I was a kid, I always knew I was an artist. And I've always been told that you're an artist and everything, and grew up in an art gallery, which was my grandmother's art gallery. So I've been around art my whole life. And for some reason, I always felt like it was maybe too easy of something to be doing because it was just there and it's just something I was. And that's something I would have to go because you have this concept of like, okay, well, then what are you going to go study? What are you going to go do with your life? And then when it's who you are already, it's kind of like, okay, what am I gonna do? And lucky for me, I love design, and I got to that stage. Okay, hold on, give me 1 second. Hold 1 second, all right?
No worries.
Somebody just need to get in real quick. Yeah, perfect. I'll be able to move too because they moved out of the living room. So we enjoy this show. What's up, my man? What's good? This is my friend Bash. She's a musician. Put you on blast, man. We're
Very
gonna be able
nice.
to do this shit. It's gonna be better. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Where was I? What was I saying?
About your grandmother, you know, how you grew up in that gallery.
Okay, yeah.
It's easy.
So basically, I found design and studied graphic design. Went to a grade school, which was the Miami Art School in Miami Beach, and I learned a lot there about communication. And so that's what I was doing for the most part of my life. Like I was a graphic designer for over 20 years. Worked at the Central Bank of Haiti. Worked at different ad agencies in Haiti, working on like branding and taking care of advertising for companies and stuff like that. So that was fun. I did the competition. There was a logo competition for Haiti, for the Haiti tourism, and I won that. So I did the logo for the country and everything. When we were doing some promo for the tourism and stuff. So that was fun. So yeah, I mean, I've been doing graphic design for over 20 years now, and it's like after a while, it was just like I just felt saturated. I didn't feel like working with some of these clients that didn't necessarily have how could I say this, like a collective perspective onto things, where we're spending like big accounts, like we're spending big money on advertising, and the way we would go about it was, I feel like, neglected like a need that the society had in general that we could have communicated to these ads, you know, and they had no interest in stuff like that. So I didn't really feel like investing myself or my talent to help anybody, to empower anybody that doesn't have that kind of perspective, you know. So that's when I started doing art, and it came at a good time in my life where like a lot of people, a lot of things that a lot of ways that we've been acting, like living in a way that was coming into question, and just like with the pandemic, with everything going on, you know. And for me, it coincided with a lot of personal things that were going on in my life also, where the art was very much like a therapy, you know, helping me get out of that funk and finding a space where I could be myself uncompromised and express whatever I'm feeling, you know, and not having to even me myself understand what's being communicated at the end of the day. It's just a flow of consciousness that's going through, and I just know it helps. And that's
Yeah,
it.
I think that, I think that art therapy portion is super important. You know, lots of folks
Yeah.
are studying, you know, to be art therapists, and really trying to hone in on how art can be that kind of cathartic release. And, you know, with the pandemic, that worldwide pandemic, we saw so much art come out of that. And so I'm wondering if you could just speak a little bit more about kind of how the pandemic affected you on kind of that artistic level, and if you were able to use it as a way to create something.
Well, for me, it was a little different. But I was painting since way before the pandemic, but the pandemic was just, I used that as just an example of like a period of time where people were just going through their things, you know. But for me personally, the pandemic started, I was in Haiti. And the reality of how the pandemic was in Haiti, and I was like on the news or worldwide, was extremely different. You know, like people weren't dying from it like in the States or everywhere else. I don't know if I'm wrong. If you Google the amounts of deaths like tallied up to this day, it's really, really low compared to the rest of the world. You know, so during the pandemic, like it didn't really change a lot in my life in the sense that I'm a homebody anyways. When I was in Haiti, I was in my studio all the time and in the mountains in Thomas and Kenskov. So when I'm up there, it's like pretty rural area of the capital, you know. So it's very different, and I'm in there all the time. So I'm never out really going out or anything like that. So the pandemic, I was really already kind of living in a like what's it called? What's that environment called? When you don't have anybody coming around and stuff like that. I was like already secluded on my own doing my art. So it didn't really affect me in that sense. But once I came here, I had like a art mural to go do in LA. When I got there, the reality of their experience there was very different than when I was in Florida, when I first got to Florida. And then when I went to New York for my art residency last summer, their experience with it was also different, you know, which it kind of informed me that, you know what, depending where you were, like the experience was dramatically different, you know,
Mm,
and then people have different ways that it affected them. Me coming from Haiti, there wasn't that much of a panic around it, you know. So me, it didn't affect me like that traumatically in a way where I'm like, my God, there's this pandemic going on. But once I got here, I could be empathetic to exactly what people went through here. You know, it was very different. So I'm sure in Chicago it was also different than in Florida, than in LA and in New York. You know, everybody had their kind of their own experience with that. But for me, it's like it was a good, like I told you, I was already kind of going through my own personal pandemic in my own life. So I was already kind of like readjusting and spending a lot of time with myself, and like a lot of self-work and already was already kind of happening for me. So during that pandemic, like it was just like a good feeling to see so many people around me like taking on themselves to do that kind of work also, you
mhm.
know, because I know what kind of a blessing it was for me in my life. So in that sense, it was a good thing. I
Wow.
feel like it was a good time for people to readjust what really matters and stuff like that, you know?
Mhm. And you brought up your residency that you did last summer
Mm-hmm.
in New York. And so I kind of want to talk about that because, and I'm going to show some images from your Instagram because it takes up a
Yeah,
pretty significant portion, but it seems like there was a lot done. You also, I know
yeah, it was fun.
you met some really great Haitian artists. One of them that I follow
Yeah,
is Stephen Babone. I
yeah,
know
yeah,
the
yeah.
work that he's doing is really great. So I'm going to show some images, but I'd love to hear a little bit
Go
more
ahead.
about that experience that you had during that residency.
Oh man, it was a really cool experience. It was a little cut short because of the pandemic and everything, so the program had kind of like stopped. But I was like, you know what? It's an opportunity. I want to do it. And mind you, like I told you, like my experience with the whole pandemic and everything was very different. So for me, I was more like, man, let's just do it. Like even if it's only 2 weeks, you know, it was supposed to be a month. So I'm due to go back sometime this year and have a solo in the fall with the same group. So from there, it was like I was like, I'm down, let's go do it. So it was 2 weeks. Like once I got there, it was like pretty intense. Like it's not an intense residency in the sense that they don't demand much of you.
Mhm.
They You do what you want, you know, with your time. So you're the one that kind of has to like prioritize what you want, you know. But for me, it was like I knew I didn't have much time, and when I got there, seeing the work that was there, you know, being around that level of artists, like the two artists that host the residency are Diego Ayana and Tonda Francis, and their work was definitely next level, you know. So when I got there, I was instantly like super impressed by Tonda's work that was being done right there, you know, in the middle of the New York City apartment in Brooklyn. She's working like a 13-foot tall statue, you know, like working with cement, making like larger than life like heads. Like I'm like, yo, what? How with a 2-year-old baby, you know? So to me, it was like, wow, this is like for the first time, I feel like I was in a room where really like the artists that were there, I felt like I really need to impress them. You know, like being like coming from Haiti, and like there's a lot of amazing artists, but those are at that level. Like you grew up with them so much that you kind of don't see them like that, you know. So it becomes different because you have like this intimate relationship with them that makes you look at them in that light. So getting there and working around Tondo's work was I was like, wow, I was automatically like, okay, this I need to come out like with some stuff, you know. So it was 2 weeks, really intense. I think during those 2 weeks, I maybe, if you tallied up all the time I was outside, I was maybe outside 4 hours or 5 hours during those 2 weeks. So I would just wake up, go in the studio, paint all day, all night. I might go down to get some food and I'm back up in the studio painting nonstop. And when you're in that zone, you know, it's like you don't really feel like you're working that hard. And plus, like I would go to sleep at like 4 or 5 in the morning, and then I would get in the apartment, and Tanda's working on a cast to go drop some cement at like 4 and 5 in the morning. And I'm like, damn, like I need to get back in the studio. Like she's not done. I can't be done, you know? So it was a good environment to be in where you're challenged, where where you feel like, okay, like I need to level up here because everybody's on a different level, You know, I feel like that's really important to any artist's like growth. You know, so for me, it was definitely a great experience.
And while you were there, or maybe just generally speaking, what inspires you? You know, you're talking about being around these artists that are next level. I think that is something for sure. You know, being from here, you know, growing up in a family that's very artistic, that could be something. What inspires you? What inspired you during that time to create what you did?
Oh, I don't know, man. Like it just comes out when it's time to come out. You know, I don't. It's not like a. It's not like a thing where I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do? Like, what am I being inspired by? It's just being inspired in general by life itself, and everything in life inspires me. You know, like every single experience, everything I see. Like I could see a chicken right now and see like the feathering on it, and then that stays, and then
Mhm.
it just comes out in the art. Like it's only way after I might be conscious of that. You know,
Mhm.
sometimes some of those inspirations I'm conscious of because I'll like by chance like find, oh my God, like this is where I found this. I can see the relationship, but so many other things bleed out into my art that I don't have that chance to be like, oh my God, this is where this came from. You know, I'm just inspired by everything. So when it's time to paint, I think it's more like a question of spending a lot of time in the studio with your practice so that your technique and those things become like a reflex, kind of like a basketball player shooting a three, you know, like you're practicing all the time. So it becomes reflex to you to be able to, you need to be in that state in order for you to create from where I create, you know,
Mhm.
so that where that you're not really worrying about technique or anything, like all that stuff is already embedded in your mind and in the way you're gonna be in your methodology, the way you work anyways. So you
Mhm.
don't have to be conscious of that part, and I can just literally be free and then just apply paint and just vibe of whatever's going on. You
Mhm.
know, it's not like a process that's like, okay, this is like we're doing this methodic at all. You know, it's
Mhm.
very organic. So the inspiration just comes, and then I guess like once you have, for me, like last minute pressure always works for to inspire me for sure. Last minute pressure, like definitely. Once I get that, like the inspiration comes a lot faster. So, but you have to be practicing a lot to be able to do that, so that you're not technique and like on this like space and like color theory, all that stuff is already part of the way you move instead of it being like something that you have to be conscious of and then go back to. You know, like when I'm doing my art, like all that stuff just already comes out of it. You know.
Mhm. And kind of, you know, you say that there's not like a set process. What about the tools that you use? You know, you talk about painting a lot, but in your Instagram, you know, we see some spray painting, we see some charcoal drawing, we see some clay. You know, is there a decision that you make there as well in terms of what inspires you and then how you're going to actually form that inspiration into something artistic?
Man, not really, man. It's
No.
it's probably gonna sound like totally like boring or whatever, but it's literally like I go into the studio and then whatever I feel like doing at that moment,
Mhm.
whatever calls at me, like is what I feel like doing. Like clay work is like sometimes I'll like most likely when you see a lot of clay work, it's because I just got the clay.
Um,
You know, I just got it, so I'm playing around with it. But before that, I was taking like when I was in Haiti before I came out here, I was taking classes with like two master ceramists in Haiti, um, Lisa and Mai too. They're like really amazing artists that taught me so much, spending good time with me and like explaining to me like the basics of the ceramic work. So that's when you see a lot of ceramic stuff like that. Usually I'm not really a ceramist. I'm more acrylic and canvas, maybe some like what's it called, pigment sticks, but I'm mostly straight with like just acrylic and 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 canvas. That's it. You know, I don't really play with other stuff. Like the other stuff is there, but I feel like eventually I will probably focus on more concrete art pieces with those mediums. But for now, I got a lot of plans to do a lot of different things, you know, like some film and all that stuff too. But right now I'm worrying about like just mostly what I do right now, which is the acrylic on canvas and focusing on that and getting that to a point where like it's I don't even know where I'm trying to get with it, man, tell you the truth. Like I have a strategy of like just doing it, and it wherever it takes me in the art world is where it's meant to go. You know, I do make certain strategic moves, but I try to let be organic also, you know, not to put too much pressure on where the art is going.
And I think that's something that really like I really think that artists, just the way that their minds work, something that I really like is just
Hmm.
like it can be, I don't want to say random because I feel like, things happen and things come
Hmm.
together, but no matter what, like the pieces always have a certain style. Every artist, even though it's kind of random, sometimes they have a certain style.
Hmm.
So I'm wondering, how would you define your style of artwork? Maybe
Mm.
and I don't know if it's changed over time, so maybe that influences it, but how would you define your style?
Well, my right now is I'm in different. My style is definitely like a huge flux, where it's definitely changing a lot from what I did in the beginning. There's still you can still see the same lines and certain things are still there, but I think like with time you start developing your own like visual language where it's less like where the influences that you had show up a lot less. You know, like if, I think like that's a natural state for any artist. Like in the beginning, that some of your masters show a lot more in your art, which is normal. You know, it's what you know works, and it's what you trust and what like you feel is good. That's why you're attracted to, and that's why you like these artists. So it's normal that your brain goes to that when you're creating, as to things that you know work. You know, but eventually with time, if you spend the time doing it, you start developing your own visual language, and that stuff starts showing less. You know, and then it becomes more you. So I feel like for me at least, that's where I'm at right now. You know, my work is really changing, but the way I work is what I feel like kind of like more describes my style, which is like the sensual style, which is to me like it's different aesthetically from like most sensual pieces. That's like most pieces that are like known as sensual, but the method of me going about it of like so basically I create many pieces at the same time to get into this rhythm that's like where you can create subconsciously, you know, where you're like you're not as present in what's coming out, where you're more channeling energies and channeling something onto the canvas, as opposed to you being conscious of, look, I'm gonna paint this, then I'm gonna paint that, you know. From what I've learned from people that had worked with the Sensole movement with Siga, the artist that created this whole movement. So from what I've learned from people that work with him, that's basically the method of Sensole, which is also, by the way, the method that like how Basquiat painted also. You know, he painted a lot of pieces at the same time without him having being exposed to it, because it's also a very natural and organic way of creation. You know, where you get into this rhythm, if you want, like the rhythm of nature in a way, you know, where you're just like creating, and whatever colors come together and they are gonna match because you're in that place where everything's in tune. You feel me? The proportions are gonna work. Everything's gonna work because you're in that state of mind. So I guess like that's mostly what I would call my technique, sensuelle, with some influence of like a lot of cubism in there, a lot of times, which is part of like where cubism comes from. Also, you know, it comes from old African statues and stuff like that. So these guys were creating within that frequency, you know.
Mhm.
So it kind of makes sense that now when I'm creating from that, cubism is something I gravitate to naturally.
And so, you're talking about, when as an artist kind of develop their style, their influence show up less, the masters show up less, and things kind of just, naturally come together. Right now at the museum, we have an artist in residence. His name is Jean-Yves Hector, from a southern region of Haiti, and has been creating, for many and many of years. And he currently is showing an exhibit at the museum called "On the Way Home, All Light is Green." And it's a lot, or actually it is all acrylic on canvas, paintings and such that he's done over the past year or so. But one conversation that I have with him is a similar one. Tell me about your style. And I think it is kind of at the point where he is still figuring that out. And so I'm wondering, what advice do you have maybe to young artists about, creating that style? Is it something that's really needed? Is it something that will happen over time? Like how would they achieve that level where then influence show up less, masters show up less, and things come naturally to them?
Well, I feel like I don't know. Like I feel like it's when you're first starting painting, or even after you've been painting for a long time, not even thinking about any of that stuff is what works the most. It's not trying to like not trying to look like something else. Or not. If that's what came out, that's what came out at that moment. Like don't try to dictate it too much. Try to guide it too much. Just let it be what it's gonna be for now. And if it's an artist that's already like trying to be like that's their career, like it's eventually if you're practicing, like you're like when I not even say practicing, like it's your practice where you wake up and then you do art, whether you're painting, whether you're doing papier mâché, whether you're doing some ceramics work, whatever it is you're doing. If you're waking up every day and that's your life, eventually, like with time, but you also have to be conscious of these things. You got to be conscious that your masters exist in your work, so that you consciously take it out, because it will bleed in there subconsciously too. It'll bleed into your work, because it's just like a comfort zone thing, where when you're gonna get challenged as to what to put next on the canvas, that your brain is gonna go to something that it knows works. It knows that this color combination that you saw on this artist's work works, because you saw it, everybody liked it, it's in the museum, it works. You have so many things that tell you that this is a good way of going about, just a good solution for this problem you have, right? So if you're not conscious that that's how your brain works, of that, and then that your masters are being into your work, you're gonna keep doing it, and then you're gonna start even defending it like as if it's yours. But you got to be conscious of it also, to be like, that's why a lot of times it's good to have some really harsh critique on your stuff. Like maybe sometimes, a lot of times, me myself, I would be in a room where people are talking about the art and they don't know it's my art. And I would meet like a art advisor that would tell me, yeah, I'm seeing some of your masters in this, I'm seeing this in there, I'm seeing this in there. And I could make the point like, well, that's just because you're limited to your knowledge of art, because this is not necessarily this artist. This artist got it from here. Da, 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 da. But at the end of the day, it still reminds them of that artist, and there's a million other ways to design, to draw an eye, for example, or to draw a head. Like if it looks like all that stuff, it most likely does. And when somebody tells you that in private or in your studio, you might be like, man, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. And then you hear it again from a person that wasn't even there, that's just admiring the art and just making a critique about it and references that. And then you're like conscious of that, like, oh damn, like it is there, So you got to consciously be able to be the one. You have to be the catalyst of change for that, or else if people start noticing it themselves, then you become just a carbon copy of somebody else. So it's okay for certain influences to come out. Like I feel like Basquiat, for example, is one of the main examples you can take. How right now, listen, if I see 20 new artists right now, maybe like 15 or 16 of them have a crown in there, or or like a body like graph of like somebody's bone and lungs and everything. And then when you understand where he comes from with these references, that's just somebody, like somewhere along the way you're just copying this. Like it's okay to steal from artists, but it's not okay to copy from them. And the difference is like when you're stealing, is like you can see how somebody creates something and take the technique of thought process from event that you live to canvas, as opposed to just be like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna draw what he drew.
Wow.
Like somebody's experience with something totally different might be the exact same expression that he was doing. He just had a Grey's Anatomy book, and then you had a mechanics book. And then in your painting, you're drawing, like you can steal from that if it affects you the same way, where you're adding certain things on there, But in general, it's like people, you have to be able to practice discernment in your art, and realize at the end of the day that we're human, and then you're gonna get influence. You just gotta be conscious that to push that extra boundary, and like take that influence that it inform you, and then pass it, do something more. Right?
I like how you say that. You can steal from them, but you can't copy them.
Yeah,
There's
it's not
and
the
that
same for sure.
difference. I think that
Yeah, there's a huge
um
difference.
yeah, that is a really big difference. I've never heard it in the way that you explained it. I think it makes so much sense,
Yeah.
especially, Basquiat being a huge example, like you said. We have lots of like books on Basquiat at the museum. And then when you kind of look at it compared to some other things, you see those similarities, but it's all about that experience, about how, people came to this, having
Yeah.
that same, road is one thing, but just, taking that crown and putting it in, taking that.
Well, it's
The,
okay too. You feel me? Like if that's what you want to do as an artist, and
Mhm.
that's what gives you satisfaction, more power to you.
Wow.
I'm not gonna say like it's not art because of that. It's just it was influenced by it and it shows up. That's
Mhm.
okay. Everybody has different things they want to do with their art.
Wow.
Like and doesn't one of doesn't make this one more art than this at the end of the day. Like it's all art at the end of the day.
Right.
And then Basquiat's influence is just that big,
Mm.
and that's that too. Some artists are just like that big. Like there was some probably like when you look at all the old like old paintings and like the Sissy Chapel and everything. There must have been some guy that painted that style first.
Right.
You feel me? And then all the classical painters started doing their versions of like of it, like Da Vinci, all of them. Like somebody came up with that style first,
Right.
and then everybody just took it and did their own thing with it. So maybe Basquiat style is just a style of painting, just like Cubism is and everything. It's a way of expression of adding colors. Maybe that I would leave that to more like an art historian or a person that knows about art that deep to be telling me like, okay, this is why it can be a style. I don't know,
Right.
but I know a lot of people references work so much right now, so it's an easy example to take.
Mhm.
But yeah, man, you're gonna be influenced by outside stuff. That's natural. You
Mhm.
just gotta be able to make sure that it's not just a story you're retelling. It's
Wow.
just like you're processing it and then you're putting it out there back in the world your own way, in your own way.
Mhm. I do, also wonder because, you've worked in Haiti, you've worked in Los Angeles, you've worked in Miami, in New York. What is your experience with working within galleries? With all the different artists, I almost feel like it may be competitive, or, how was that experience for you in those different spaces?
Well, I'm sure it's competitive. I've never been in a situation where that competition. Well, I can't really say that. Nah, I've never been in a really situation where like that competition like showed up. I'm sure artists are competitive with each other,
Mhm.
but I've been lucky enough to only have witnessed or gone through experiences where everybody seemed to be like about the collective more than themselves, you know. So I guess I'm lucky in that, but I'm not oblivious that it does exist, that that competition feeling does exist, Like when you see another artist get a grant or something like that, you're an artist, you would love to have gotten that grant also, But even if you were to think like, oh, I deserve it more, you got to be able to catch yourself too and be like, yo, you tripping. Like, like just be grateful for the other person. And for me, it's like I most of my artist friends are Haitian
Mhm.
because that's who I know. That's who I've been around so far. So for me, like whenever a Haitian wins something, like whether I believe it was deserved or not, I'm happy because one of us is going through that door, and then it puts us out there, changing the narrative of who we are, and some like all of it for me is a win.
Mhm.
A win for me is a win for all of the Haitian artists. A win for this Haitian artist is a win for all of us.
Mhm.
So me, I don't have that competitive side in it like that. I'm not like I told you from the beginning. Like for me, my art is gonna. I don't put that pressure on it. I have a career as a designer. If I want that kind of pressure in my life, then I try to do it with design.
Right.
Okay, I'll go into that world. Okay, I need to be this. I need to get a pencil. Like I need to get this. I need to get that. For the art, I try to erase all that pressure that that comes with like the social constructs we live in. All
Wow.
of them try to kind of get out the way, whether it's time, everything is out the window, man. Like none of that pressure comes when it comes to my art, whether it's gonna make it somewhere or not. It is what it's gonna be. You
Right.
know?
Well, we hope it does. I mean, we hope it does, in that year that
Of
won
course, of course.
the
Listen, if
Grammy.
it does, then I'm. I'm gonna be as equally grateful as as wherever it does go. You
Uh-huh.
feel me? Like you might be living right now and your art gets to a certain point, and then years later after you pass away, like years later, like somebody finds your art, and then at that time where they are socially and what matters to them socially makes that work resonates at that time, and then you become like the biggest artist to ever live at that moment. You know, years after you pass, years after people forgot about you. You know, once you create it and you put it out there for the universe, you got to realize that like time is forever, you know, anything can happen and you don't know. You
Yeah.
feel me? Just make sure you put your whatever you're doing, that you put your energy in it and you love what you're doing. So
Mm-hmm.
that you're not that's little time that you are blessed with here, that you're actually doing something that you enjoy and believe that when you're gone, that whatever you leave behind can speak for you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Something
it's
that
gonna
you
speak for you for sure.
say, something you mentioned recently was, when a Haitian artist gets a grant, it's about that
Hmm.
communal space. It's about, coming together as a collective, because it helps, change the narrative. I think you used those words, and I resonate with that because, at HAMOC at the Haitian American Museum in Chicago, that's why we're here, is to help change that narrative, of what, folks know about Haiti, Haitian culture, and Haitian art.
Yeah.
About, I
Hmm.
would say almost, 80% of our
I'm just
collection.
what I'm just hearing. I'm on you.
Oh, about 80% of our collection is donated material, from
That's
different
five people.
families and different artists. And it's just kind of interesting that people don't know, like, 100% like the value of this, when they're giving it to the museum. They just know it's Haitian, but there's always so many more stories and so many more experiences in the work. Things that I think, artists like yourself and the other Haitian artists, those stories I think are coming out of the woodwork now. The Haitian
Yeah.
artists are really starting to be seen and heard. Everyone has a voice. Their voices are just being elevated right now. And I think
Yeah,
that's great.
definitely.
I think it is a good experience, and a good way to kind of set up the future, for generations of artists to come.
No, for
Yes.
sure. And that's what's super important is that we need to create a space for ourselves where we can be like unapologetically or uncompromised like ourselves, you know, like where a safe space for Haitian artists in general. I don't want to be that one token Haitian artist that made it through, and then where like the whole system can use me as a like, you know, like, oh, look at him, he worked hard. He did. Nah, I'm not interested in any of that, you know. Like for me it's more about, and that's what to me art is at the same time, you know. It's what art is to me, it's what being Haitian is to me, is being rebellious in the sense of I don't have to accept the status quo, you know. Like I can, it's not because I came here and things are the way they are that that's the way they are. You
Mhm.
know, there was probably a time when it wasn't that way, and there's probably gonna be a time when it's not that way. But you know, for me, it's like if they don't want to accept our art in a certain way, then we're gonna make our own space. We're gonna break a hole to the door and make our own door, and
Mhm.
then ain't nobody has to open it and leave it open for the next person because that door stays open for everybody. You know,
Right.
like it's a safe space for all Haitian artists to be able to like come and communicate or basically take a control of our narrative.
Mhm.
You know, like so we can tell the stories like you're saying about who Haitians really are, what our history is about. Because a lot of things I feel like people don't know, and then because they don't know, they'll accept a lot of different things.
Mm.
You know, it's a lot easier to accept that okay, this situation is the way it is because that's how it's been. Nah, it wasn't always that way. You
Mhm.
know, and then we need to inform people more about that, which is gonna make them make better choices in the long run.
Mhm.
So yeah.
And I would love to go a little bit like deeper into that, because before we started the artist talk today, I asked you, how you identified. I'm like, do you identify as Haitian American? And you were very like, no, it's Haitian,
Haitian, Haitian,
it's
Haitian,
Haitian. And
Haitian, Haitian.
and I think identity is super important, just generally speaking. I think right now specifically, as there are
Yep.
so many this and so many that. Who are we? Who am I? And so I'd like to, kind of pose that question again. What does being Haitian mean to you as an artist, as an individual, as someone who's worked internationally? What does being Haitian mean to you?
For me, being Haitian is being from the first free Black country, which means a lot in the world we live in. You know, like is a lot about knowing my history and understanding where my people came from and why my country is in the situation it's in. You know, and being Haitian is being Black, but not only that, but being Black in a different context than what, for example, in North America is a whole different concept. You know, like my relationship with race is very much different than an African American. You know, it's understanding those differences also that makes me be able to have empathy for the other like people that have been to our history, went through the slave trade. You know, we all have different experiences, but all of them are also true and bear witness to the situation of people of color in general in the world. You know, so being Haitian is connected to all that, being the first Black country. You know, like that was a status quo change. Like everywhere else in the world, slavery was the norm. And then this little country comes in and says, nope, we're changing that. So for me, that's why I have that perspective of being able to imagine things differently than what they are. Where most of the time in a room, everybody's like, well, that's the way it is. That's the way we're going to move.
Mhm.
So I'm usually that one person that you put me in that room. There's going to be some kind of like, there's going to be some turbulence because I'm going to be like, well, it doesn't have to be this way. You know, I'm always going to see it that way because that's where I'm from. And that's such a deep part of my identity as a Haitian. You know, I'm not saying all Haitians are this way, but for me, at least, the way I was brought up, like the things I was exposed to and my history and everything, that's the perspective I have. That anything things can change. We don't have to accept things the way they are if they're not fair. And that even if we're smaller, we can. So for me, it's like no matter what, like I've seen it my whole life. I've seen people getting by on so little, you know, and it's like I know that no matter what the situation is, if we want, we're gonna make it happen. You know, like whenever we're doing projects, like project managing, setting up art shows, they'd be like, yo, we only have 2 days to do this. And I'd be like, yo, if we want to do it, we'll do it. Like there's ways to do it. We'll spend the night here and make it happen or whatever, you know? And that comes from me at least. That comes from being Haitian, you know, and some people tell you, well, Haitian people are this, Haitian people are that. For me, it's like I'm Haitian and that's not what I am, you know. So that's not the only way to define us.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So there's other ways. And that's why I feel like I'm so grateful that to be in a generation where, like you said, a lot of artists are coming out the woodwork at different levels of it, you know, and then coming out and expressing our voice, making our voice heard as young Haitians. That's I feel like that's super important. You know, I'm more in the lower bracket of the young Haitians, but I'm still in the mix, and I feel so grateful to be part of that. You know, so yeah.
Yeah, lower bracket, whatever that may mean, you're still in the bracket. You know, you're
That's
still
it.
there. You're still there. I do want to
Facts.
open it up to some of our guests. You know, and I haven't seen any questions come through the chat, but if there are any questions you have for SAMDI, feel free to throw it in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself, kind of as we wrap up things this evening.
All right, cool.
Hello, everyone. Very
Hello.
nice intervention. I wanted to further understand the intricacy of or the his understanding of the difference between copying an artist and stealing from an artist, because at times you make reference on the similarity of an artist being a music, like music, right? So in copying a musician or sampling, it would be the better form of continuing a work rather than stealing his song. What is the, based on your knowledge, what made you say that, and what is the difference when it comes to art?
Well, it's just like music. To me, it's the exact same thing. It's like there's a difference between sampling something and creating something new with it, and then straight copying it. You know, like you could sample something and then make it something totally different, and that's you actually stole that and made it yours. You know, if you're looking at it just verbatim, you know, I took this and I made it mine. Like I literally took this one part of a song where there's like a high pitched tone singing in it, and I take that, I slowed it down, I put some reverb on it, I did all this other stuff to it, and I use it in a beat where now it's just like 2 seconds in the beat. You know what I mean? I took something from a 4-minute song and then turned it into a 2 second in my beat, and it did something else. Like you're creating something totally different, you know, like totally different from what you heard first. And that's what the difference is. So when you're copying an artist, it's like you're taking what he's doing and you're just like basically like you're putting like tracing paper over it, and then like saying, okay, this is the way he draws eyes. His eyes are this shape, so I'm gonna draw my eyes this shape. You know, what influencing would be like, okay, this guy is using a shape that's totally different to do an eye than what is usually used by most artists. So stealing that would be like, okay, he's taking something that's done in a certain way and then reshaping it and doing it his own way. So that would be stealing from him as opposed to copying him. You know, it's like, okay, he's processing this, the way he's processing the information and putting it out is the way he goes about it as opposed to what he's doing necessarily. You know, like Basquiat was influenced by that book, by the Grey's Anatomy book when he was in the hospital. So he puts a lot of anatomy things inside his art. So if now I'm putting anatomy things in my art, you gotta ask me like, what's your reference? Like, why are you drawing this anatomy thing? What event in your life made you feel like you want to use these things? You know, what influence did Grey's Anatomy books had on your life? And most of you find out the person had nothing to do with it. You know, but the reference could look the same. It could be a skeleton and the reference is something religious. You know, maybe the person is from Mexico and Day of the Dead is a big thing. So he's using a skeleton. It might look like a Basquiat skeleton, but Basquiat is referencing. So context also matters, you know? And that's for like, for example, Duchamp's work, where like the ready-made is like taking something that already exists. And once you put it in a different place, did you remix it enough for it to be art again? You know, where he had like a chair. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, where he had like a chair, a picture of a chair, the definition of a chair, and an actual chair together. And at the end of the day, none of these are a chair. You know, so there's a definition of a chair. When you read it, it tells you a chair is this, this, and that. That's a definition of a chair. There's a photo of a chair. And when you see it, if I ask you what it is, you're going to see a chair. And then the actual chair that's there is an art piece. So nobody's ever going to sit on it. So by definition of what a chair is, this isn't a chair. You know, so context, how you put context into art can actually change what the meaning of it is. You know, there's that other artist that took all, I can't remember his name right now, that's horrible. But he took all the Marlboro, he took some Marlboro ads of cowboys on horses. And then he just basically he took the same image and then he cropped it in a different way and then presented them as new art pieces. Mm. So taking those cowboys out of the context of an ad and then saying something else with it about Americana and stuff like that made those totally legit art pieces, and they couldn't even sue him or anything like that. Mm. You know?
Thank you very much. I understand it now.
All right.
Well, my last question before I leave, I just wanted to know, when you mentioned that in your art, you like the last minute pressure, does that takes an effect with your graphic design and the professional side of your work?
100%. Yeah, that's where I learned that. Well, not skill, but that's where I learned that from. You know, it's working in design and having sometimes like having workloads of like in a week you have this many presentations, and then you have to creatively come up with a lot of work. You know, ever since school, you know, you have that last week where all the printers don't work, and then you have to be working extra time, like things you procrastinated. I'm a procrastinator by nature. You know, maybe because I know that subconsciously, I know I have that skill set.
Well, good
being able
to
to come out
happy
last
this
minute.
is being recorded.
But yeah, man, that's the way it is. Like, I mean, that's just the way I work. And if I have a deadline, if I'm supposed to meet it, I'll meet it. But I might like wait till the last minute. So if you're there in the room with me, you might panic a little bit. But it's a combination,
well,
man. Yeah.
Congratulations on your work.
Thank you, my man.
And keep that angle.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you
yes.
very much.
We do have a question in the chat. How do you want your art to impact people or society here in the US or in Haiti?
I don't know. I want people, basically, I feel like my work is, they're like subconscious scapes, like landscapes, but of the subconscious in a way. Because I don't really name any of my work. They're all untitled for the most part. So I really want people to be able to look at this artwork and kind of like try to like understand why they're saying what they're saying. It's a chance for you to look inwards. As when you see them, if it's not explained to you with a title what it is, you kind of have to reference yourself. Like your programming, things you've been exposed by, to try to make sense out of what you're seeing, because most of it is not like a tangible, like this is what this is. So the fact that I don't put a title to it, it really leaves it open for you to see whatever you're gonna see. And it's as important as what I see being the artist. Especially the way my process, not like I say I'm gonna paint a boat or this guy on a boat. Like I'll start painting and then that's what came out. So I don't feel like I'm that much in charge of it, where I don't want to name it even, and I'm looking at it and I'm trying to make sense of what I'm seeing, just like the audience member that's looking at the painting and trying to make sense of what he's seeing. I'm in the exact same spot as them. Once I'm not in that zone anymore and I'm just looking at the piece for the piece that it is, I'm in the same spot. So if I see this and then you see that, it's equal, they're both as valid. You feel me? So I feel like my art, if anything, helps people understand that, have that understanding that we're just a bundle of different things we've been exposed to, and this personality and the way we see things are just that. Like some people see a piece and then they'll be like, oh my God, this is scary. And then the next person that sees this, oh my God, this is so beautiful. This is, and then they're just looking at it from different perspectives or different points of view. And then I feel like it will probably even change depending on the time of day you see the art. Are you hungry when you're seeing the art? Are you hangry when you're seeing the art? All that stuff influences how we process things. Where is my subconscious going right now in order to make sense of what I'm seeing right now? That's gonna kind of depend on your mood and what you've been through all day. If people have been pissing you off and reminding you of something that used to piss you off when you were younger, right now, and then you're looking at stuff, you might be maybe a little bit more skeptical about what you're seeing, a bit more judgy about what you're seeing. So I feel like, if anything, I hope my art like lets people understand that they're not stuck in a moment. However you're feeling right now can change and be totally opposite of what you thought, what you're thinking of after, like another day. It's like we change moods, we change perspectives. Like you don't have to ride or die with what you're thinking right now. And sometimes we have to like reassess what we're thinking, understand where that's coming from. Like, why am I saying this? Why am I thinking this? And realize actually it's not that serious, or it's not, So I guess that would be something I would love my art to be able to do.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that answer. That gives me a lot to think about, now kind of looking at your images, that it's interesting, just kind of the artist and then the viewer. And a lot of the times the artist never sees the viewer, but then to kind of put yourself on this very similar plane with the viewer, is a very interesting dynamic. And we do have one last question in the chat. What would be the message you want your art to convey in general?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, that's what it is. The same thing. It's like, I want the message is more,
Okay,
I would say.
So basically, the way that I asked the question, it's based on that question from Margaret, which makes sense, which your answer makes sense as well, because I'm an art fanatic. I love art in my own way, and I'll probably say I'm a collector, and not one of the pieces of art that I've acquired, exactly like SAMDI was saying, it's what the artist sees. So exactly everything that he says. But but that is, I would say that is the communication of impact. So whatever impacts me is based on my history, based on my life. I see things with a different lens. So my guide question got me to think that's coming from the art appreciator, who likes SAMDI, the person that buys SAMDI art. They have different views of what they're buying and the reason why they're buying. Now I'm talking about on the creator side, when you're creating, and the reason why I put in general is to not to go to, let's say, because some arts have to do with your past, some arts have to do with relationships, so different things. But at the end of the day, as an artist, in general, I don't know if I would call it what is your motto, because it can go far. But in terms of art, when you're painting and you're putting, because you did art shows already, great ones down in Miami, and you choose pieces. So you're not working with a gallerist that chooses what to show for you. You choose pieces. So overall, what is the general thing that you like? Empowerment, capability of I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, man. I don't really have. For me, if it's up to me, I feel like all my pieces should be in the show. I feel like if like there's an art show, I feel like all the pieces I have should be in the show, and I feel like all of them are good enough to be in the show. So most of the time, whatever you see in the show it's not my choices. Like I've never had a show where I'm like, okay, I'm showing this. Like I've been in shows where I've worked on the pieces going into the show to the last day before. So that was all there was to put in the show anyways. So but that's different. That was earlier in my career. I don't think I would do that. I would take a chance to do something like that now. Just because I'm just more tired in general. Like back then I was really trying to like get out there like that. And I was working on stuff all through the night. So like I knew I would be able to get these paintings out. And now I'm working on like I feel like right now where I create from is maybe a lot more different in the sense that it takes a lot more time to create what I create now, where I have to sit with it a lot more as opposed to before where I was just, I don't even know how to explain it, to tell you the truth. But what was the question again? Kind of got lost.
No,
Well, so basically you answered, like there's not a
Oh yeah, what was like what makes me think that these pieces are better,
so,
or what? Well, it's a feeling, I
or better,
guess.
the way the way you explain that you go about doing your art. So I would probably say, what is repetitive in your thought, or what is repetitive in your why I'm doing this?
I
Is there
think
one thing?
I think that would be trying not to have that. You feel me? It's like trying to create without that is the common goal, is not to have something common. Where I'm trying to create from this space of nothingness. So when certain things always repeat themselves and come out, like I have like this little fish shape that always comes out in my art, and I'm not conscious of it that it's coming out. It's just always there. Like I might do a whole bunch of pieces and then I'll see it in every single one of them, but I try not to be conscious of these things, or not try to put them with, there's no hierarchy in what I do. I try to look at the art piece, and that's why I'm telling you in the sense that there's not something specific, because I feel like every single piece that's on that canvas is eligible to get painted over at any moment. You feel me? So it's like I try not to look at any part of it with any prejudice, which is kind of like life, certain things you want to hold on to. Like I might be doing this piece and there's like one paint effect that happened by like luck. You feel me? And I'm like, oh man, I like this. And I don't want to lose it. So I'm trying to paint around it all the time. And because of that, the piece is either going to move in an awkward direction or it's not going to move at all, because I'm trying to hold on to that one piece that I didn't even plan on happening. But I like it so much that I'm almost scared to lose it. While in reality, if I'm willing to lose it, I might come up with a masterpiece. You feel me? So life is kind of like that sometimes. Whether it's in relationship and different things, we try to hold on to things that we feel like, oh my God, I love this so much. this is indispensable to my happiness right now. In reality, it's not. You feel me? And I mean, that's the ultimate thing in life, you know, like looking at life and death, you know, everything that we feel like is like, without this, I can't be is real. In reality, that's not true.
Wow.
You feel me? So I look at the art in that sense, where art is a very good, like, you can look at life and look at art and see a lot of similarities. And for me, these are the things that helped me understand a lot of things when I was going through my shit and using my art as kind of like a therapeutic place. You know, it's like what I learned from the art is learning to let go of things that you might not think should be let go of, but once you let go of it, you get to create this masterpiece after. You know, and then you holding on to that just little piece of art, a little paint thing, is stopping from this masterpiece to be. You know, so certain things are there to be beautiful for this amount of time, and then it's ephemeral, and after that it goes. It doesn't have to be like, it doesn't have to be there forever. Enjoy from where it was. I enjoy that piece of, oh man, that was dope. Maybe take a picture of it, but I'll create the rest of the painting, not giving a damn whether it get covered or not. And a lot of times it ends up staying, not by and totally by accident. By the time I'm done, and then, oh, look at that little part I like, it actually is still there, you know. But once you try to hold on to these, at least for me, you know, and it's a very personal thing. Other artists can be creating a different way. For me, I really try not to care. It's not that I don't care, but I guess that it's looking at everything without prejudice on the piece. You know, I appreciate every single piece of it equally, and everybody is liable to get painted on. I guess that's the best way to look at it, you know? So yeah, I try to have no method in what I'm doing. Like, no method, no time frame, no nothing. Like, it's a void of all the structures that we have in this conscious and this construct we created for us. I try to create my art void of all of that. You know, no time, nothing. You know,
That's wow. You know, I resonate with that. I think there's so many lessons in there about art and life, and I'm really excited to share this program with lots of artists, young artists within the museum community, within all these communities, because I really truly think that there's a lot to take away from just even this last part of the Q&A, and I really do want to thank you, SAMDI, for being here tone,t and for really truly an insightful conversation and look into your art. So thank you so much, SAMDI, for being here. And I know before we go, we're a little bit over time, but I want to just give you a second to talk about this exhibition that you're working on in Miami.
Yes. Yeah, we have an exhibition on May 6th to May 28th in the Buick building in Miami, in the design district. And it should be a pretty cool show. There's a lot of really cool artists attached to the show. It's a group show curated by Idna Depine and Max Pierre from Nula in Miami. So it should be a really dope event. I'll keep you guys posted and send you guys the promos once they start coming out. Yeah, it has a really good roster of really amazing artists. And that's the whole point of the show is, and the name of the show is Nula. It's to basically explain that, which is Creole for we're here, and then we've been here, and then we're always gonna be here. And as a country, as Haitians, we're trying to create this, what we're talking about is like create this new space for us and taking over this narrative of who we are and what we're about and our history, and inform people about our history and stuff like that. So this show is it's a whole group of Haitian artists from different parts of the living in different parts of the world. Wow. And so yeah, man, it should be really amazing. I think the artist is a 10 to 11 artist list. Wow. So yeah, it should be really, really cool, man. I'll definitely keep you posted on that.
Yeah, please do.
I'm showing 3 pieces. I think I'm showing 3 pieces.
Okay.
So yeah, it should be cool.
Yeah, please keep us updated. Give us some promo. We'd love to promote that. And now having you a part of the HAMOC family, you're stuck with us. So we're here to promote and support your work and you personally. So anything you need, please send it our way. We're here to be that resource.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, again, thank you very much, and thank you for everyone for being here this evening. Just a quick announcement before we go. May, as you may know, is Haitian Heritage Month, and we have a whole lineup of programs. We're going to bring in another artist for our second artist talk. SAMDI, you were the first from a long, long time. I don't know the last artist talk. So
that's great.
Thank you for being number one. And stay tuned, everyone, for everything happening in May for Haitian Heritage Month. But thank you for being with us tonight. I will send out the recording and a follow-up email tomorrow. But have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to having you all at another program in the future.
All right, cool. You
Thanks,
guys
everyone.
take care. Bye, Emma. Bye, Carlos.
Have a good night. Thank you, Samdi.
All right, my man. Take care.